Hey you, yeah you who clicked on this video. Thanks for giving our channel a shot. And if you will, please do us the honor of watching the video all the way through. Appreciate it. Now onto the video.
I saw him save the day dozens of times, with nothing but his wits, body, and will. But I saw something else as the years passed. He was getting older, slower. Soon he'd have to retire, or more likely, someone would finally manage to kill him. The thought of a world without Batman was unacceptable. So I decided to make a new one.
Matt Reeves, the Batman. Is it just another Hollyweird navel-gazing experiment, or is this actually faithful to the source material? Let's talk about it. Matt Reeves' The Batman is an interesting movie. In the wake of standalone DC films such as Joker, we have a Batman film that is taking place with a younger Batman in a more crime-ridden Gotham, in a similar vein to a Batman Begins, but with more of a focus on the detective aspects of the Batman character and the Batman mythos. In this film, we're dealing with a substantially younger Bruce Wayne and a substantially younger Batman who has yet to really affirm his identity within the city of Gotham as the caped crusader we know as Batman. Many characters in this film refer to him as Vengeance rather than Batman, as that is what he introduces himself as early on in the film. Now, in this film, Robert Pattinson, who you'll know from various films such as I hate to do this to him, Harry Potter, the Twilight franchise, and Christopher Nolan's Tenet, plays the titular role of the Batman and also Bruce Wayne. Now, we've had various actors play this role through the decades, going back to the late 80s all the way up until now. Is Robert Pattinson the best Batman? Well, I would say no, but is he the worst Batman? Definitely not. If anything, I really enjoyed parts of his portrayal of the character of Batman. Very stoic, very silent. It definitely reminds me of the Batman from the animated series in the way that he deals with others while being Batman. However, his Bruce Wayne, I do believe, is what is severely lacking in this particular iteration. It was definitely played better in other various iterations of Batman, that being like a Ben Affleck's Batman or a Christian Bale's Batman or even a Val Kilmer's Batman. The Bruce Wayne persona was definitely handled with a little bit more care, but I don't really blame Robert Pattinson for that. As you'll see when you watch the movie, there aren't very many Bruce Wayne scenes, so that's something to consider. Now, we have the cast rounding out with Andy Serkis playing Alfred, and he is playing an Alfred that definitely recognizes his past as a British agent, and so he is instrumental in training Bruce in the ways of how to fight and strategize and think and other things. He actually helps Bruce on the case that he's currently working on. So that's interesting. Now, what I like toward the end of the movie, but not so much in the early movie. And by the way, this movie is long. We're talking about a runtime, I do believe, of 2 hours and 56 minutes. So there's a lot going on here, but I digress. So with the Alfred character, the dynamic between Bruce and Alfred is interesting in this film, because you're dealing with a much less paternal version of Alfred, and Bruce is not necessarily very receptive to the parenting of Alfred in this film. So I think that dynamic is different. I don't know if I like it or not, but it is different. So then we have Jeffrey Wright as Lieutenant James Gordon, and this is because since this is an early iteration of the mythos and the characters, he has not yet become Commissioner Gordon. So that being said, it's a very interesting take on the character, him working with Batman very closely as opposed to kind of being Batman's handler and liaison between the police and the criminal element. So, it's different. I don't necessarily really like the race swapping. I don't really feel like it was necessary, especially with a character that has such a storied history and has played and his character has been cemented as looking a certain way. But Jeffrey Wright does pretty well in the role. He's a great actor anyway. So I think he's able to transcend that problem, even though, technically, since it was so unnecessary, it does feel like the character is tokenized. But like I said, I do like the dynamic between him and Pattinson, and just, the banter back and forth between them works. Now, we're moving on to Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, or Selena Kyle. And this character is interesting. And she's interesting because in this iteration, which we've seen in the comics, she is more of a working girl by night, and then she uses her connections as a hostess and, basically just a club girl to get information on her marks so that she can rob them, because she's a cat burglar as well, i.e. Catwoman. Now, I thought that she was an interesting choice for this role, not because she lacks in any acting talent, but because of her being a very small framed individual. I mean, she can't weigh more than about 70 or 80 pounds soaking wet. So some of the feats of strength that she's able to accomplish, you definitely have to suspend disbelief. And what's weird is that in one fight that she has, it's clear that they took this into consideration, that she is smaller, therefore she has to use various techniques and elements of her frame and her size in order to overcome larger enemies. But then later on in the film, they just throw that completely away, and she's beating up 200-pound guys, with the worst of Hollywood nonsense. So that's kind of disappointing. But her performance overall, I really enjoyed. I actually enjoyed her as Catwoman. I thought that she did very well. And her chemistry with Pattinson actually works very, very well. One thing I didn't like in the script is they definitely push the identity politics with some of her lines, but they're so quick and throwaway that it's not really going to take you out of the experience. Then we have Colin Farrell as the Penguin. And he actually does a great job, so much so that you don't even realize that it's Colin Farrell playing the Penguin. I mean, amazing job. Now, the next person on the list, I can't really tell you who he is. Just know that the Riddler is done very well, almost on the level of, I'd say, Heath Ledger's Joker. He is very methodical, very focused, and his character has Batman on his heels for most of the film. He is definitely done in such a way that if you're a fan of the original movies, they definitely take this Riddler seriously, as opposed to, let's say, the Jim Carrey Riddler that we saw in the Val Kilmer Batman film. He is definitely a force to be reckoned with, and they treat his intellect also very seriously. He's definitely a force to be reckoned with, and he is very serious about his goals and what he wants to accomplish. So I appreciated the actor that played him, but again, I cannot tell you who it is because that would be a spoiler. Now, all the other characters that round this out are really good. John Turturro does a very good Carmine Falcone in this film, and the mob elements are done well. So let's get to a little bit of the bad. So even though the story, like I said, does focus a lot on the detective elements of the series, what you have here is kind of a mixed bag, especially when we have to talk about action set pieces and suspension of disbelief. And the reason that I say that is because I understand that this is a comic book film. However, this movie purports itself to be very grounded in a quasi-reality, far more than a lot of the other Batman films, and you'll see that when you go into the film. But there are certain things that just don't work for the character, don't work for the story, and don't work for logic. So I'll go over those now. So what you have is you got some crazy stuff happening. So one thing that's just insane, the threshold for punishment that the Batsuit can take in this movie. What the heck? I'm talking about he is able to take automatic gunfire to the face. Like he is just, he's almost unstoppable in this first iteration of the Batsuit. It gets to the point at some point in the movie where he can take something larger than small arms fire, and I'm not going to spoil what it is, but when you see it, you'll understand. It is ridiculous. Then we have the Catwoman scenes, and like I said, they start out pretty realistic, but then they devolve into this, oh goodness, into this kind of weird Hollywood scene where you have this small woman beating up on 6-foot+ dudes who outweigh her. Some of these guys might outweigh her by 3 times. And yet she's, throwing them around like rag dolls, and it just makes very little sense, physically. Then there's, oh God, this is the most annoying part to me, and maybe it's just me, but so Batman has these huge boots throughout the whole movie. And I'm not really a fashion person, so that's not really the big deal. What is the big deal is every time he steps, it is loud. I mean, oh my God, it's like, dude, you're supposed to be like quiet and being able to sneak up on people. And it's like, and I know that they're using it as like a fear element, like, oh, he's coming, like almost like a Jason Voorhees type, but that's not Batman. So that's definitely irritating. Also, there's a lot of wanton destruction in this movie, and there's very little payoff for the destruction that happens. Now, I do realize that this is a Batman that's starting out, so he doesn't really have the whole being Batman thing figured out. But there's one scene in particular that people died. Like, I'm talking not a small amount of people, and it's due to Batman basically not wanting to allow a criminal to escape, or somebody that he feels is responsible for something to escape. And so they trash like a large stretch of highway, and there's no doubt in my mind that there are multiple casualties for no payoff whatsoever in the case that Batman is working. So, I mean, these are just a couple of things that just did not work. And like I said, I don't want to spoil anything, but you will understand as it goes through. Now, we were told that this movie was going to be standalone and probably wouldn't be getting sequels. I can pretty much tell you that that's not true. There will be sequels to this movie. There will be sequels. They will continue the story. So if you enjoy Robert Pattinson Batman, you're going to get him again. And if you didn't enjoy Robert Pattinson Batman, you're going to get him again. So, take that for what you will. But overall, I enjoyed this movie. If you're a fan of Batman, I say definitely watch it. There is something here, and there is something to enjoy. So if I got to put a big number on it, I would give The Batman an 8 out of 10. So that being said, guys, we're done with this video, and we'll see you on the next one. 8-Bit Heroes out. Peace. I'd like to give a big shout out to Lord Bandit. Welcome to the 8-Bit Heroes family. Big shouts out to you. If you'd like to get a shout out on the channel, then hit that like button, maybe share it with a couple of friends, and do us the biggest honor of all, and subscribe to the channel so you can join the 8-Bit Heroes family. And while you're at it, hit that bell icon so you can be notified when our new videos come out.